And now it's time for your turn.
Two North Country hospitals plan to use their own ambulance service to transport patients to other hospitals, but some volunteer rescue squads say the move could put them out of business. Nancy says the monies would be better spent on improvements in the hospital they own so they can keep patients in town instead of shipping them all over New York. Another comments, I have been involved in emergency services for over 2 decades and fully support this endeavor as it will ultimately allow these agencies to focus more on honoring the commitment of the contracts and be more available for actual emergency response. The Watertown School Board decided to pause action on removing 47 books from library shelves at the high school. The list includes books being banned in other parts of the country, causing controversy. Michelle says some books should not be available in schools. But Debbie asks who will determine what is inappropriate. What offends some does not offend all. This is a dangerous road to go down. Another question, if they are inappropriate for high schoolers, how did they get there to begin with? And the final comment, banning books is never a good idea. The North Country's Mennonite community gathered last week to rebuild a Denmark home destroyed by fire. Karen says that is what a community should do, help each other out in time of need. And Sally says, amazing group of selfless people.